So you've come this far with me. I hope you'll walk a little bit further as we go deeper into my third quarter 2025 pickups. Just kind of a fun trip through all of the interesting things that I've picked up for the third quarter of 2025. If you are new to the channel, my name is Dub C, and I want to thank you for being with me for part 2 of this video series. If you are new to the channel, if you've never been here before, maybe you've caught a few of my videos, maybe it's time to think about clicking on that subscription button. Remember, it doesn't cost anything to subscribe to a channel. It's really just a way to show support. And if you're one of my returning subscribers, I am encouraged that you are back here with me for part 2 of this video series. Hopefully it means that you saw some pretty cool stuff in part 1. I'd like to think so, and I'm glad that you're here again with me now. If you are new to the channel, I like to begin my videos with a simple disclaimer. I am not a financial advisor. I'm not trying to offer you any kind of financial advice. I'm simply trying to share some of my experience having bought and sold precious metals and rare coins for the last 30 or 40 years. And if you recall from the first video, we talked about 2 concepts I wanted you to be thinking about. The first of those concepts is just a really simple thing that we call sleeper, right? That is something that probably deserves to have a higher price because of its a low mintage or its age or its scarcity condition. But for some reason, it just never really caught on with collectors. Consequently, the prices are a little bit depressed. We'll talk about one of those in this video. And the other concept that I was sharing with you is the idea of enhancement. This is something that I've been trying to do for pretty much my entire stacking career, but it's something that I kind of refocused on towards the middle of last year, and that's the idea of making your stack better and not just making it bigger. Hopefully you've seen some pretty interesting examples of that. We'll continue on with that. Before we go any further, I wanted to touch on the things that we talked about at the very end of last video, because interestingly, these 2 bars, which are crazy, the fact that they're sequential numbers, right? That many years apart, I'm still kind of scratching my head about that one. But the fact is that these 2 bars look very, very similar to some of the other bars that have hit the market in just the last couple of days. Why is that? These bars are called revived Engelhard bars. And in fact, I did an entire video about this. The fact that one of the biggest and best and most widely respected bullion creators in the world right now is PAMP. And PAMP licensed the name for Engelhard, even though Engelhard stopped making consumer bullion 25, 30 years ago, maybe even more than that. PAMP has revived the name with a new style of retro bars. And interestingly, unbeknownst to me, as I was shelling out my money to pick up one of these really cool MTB 1986 Statue of Liberty 10-ounce silver bars, those were the bars, at least some of the ones, that PAMP has revived in the Engelhard name. And if you haven't seen them yet, and these images have been coming out very, very slowly, as they have been releasing these retro pieces that look like vintage Engelhard but have been made recently. And I'll put a link down to the video down below so you can catch up with it if you have any interest. They decided to recreate these bars, which is a little bit strange, right? These were not huge sellers for Engelhard as far as I'm aware of. Engelhard has been pumping out consumer bullion, or did at the height of the consumer bullion, golden age, if that's what you want to call it, maybe the 1980s. Engelhard put out millions of silver bars. These ones are an interesting choice, to say the least, and you're looking at these retro bars, right? These revived Engelhard names that are bars that are actually being put out by PAMP today that look just like these bars. You can look at the front of it, and I'll show you the back in just a second. These sets come in a 3-piece set, so it's a 1 ounce, a 5 ounce, and a 10-ounce bar that resemble this. And remember from the last video, we actually had 1 ounce bars that look just like this also. But look at the back, and you're looking at an image of the back of these revived bars. You can see that they have revived them completely, although the copyright date that you see here, 1986, is definitely a 2025 date on those revived bars. The jury's still kind of out on those. From kind of a back of the napkin poll that we did, it seems like most of the stackers who are subscribed to my channel were not especially a fan of this type of new material. And I gotta admit, the idea of reproducing something that is collected now because it's a classic kind of rubs me the wrong way. Let me know what you think about that. Interesting that they decided to go with these bars. So let's pick up where we took off with these bars. and that is the art bars. If you recall from the first video that I talked about, I kind of see things in three different ways: industrial or refining bars when we're talking about these small vintage bars, industrial bars, and then I think investment or banking bars, and then we have art bars, classic traditional art bars. And we'll talk about some art bars in this video. This is kind of the fun stuff, right? This is easily a fan favorite, and I know a lot of people are going to recognize this one as soon as I picked it up, right? This is a Coca-Cola bar. These are incredibly popular. This was a huge series that was originally made, if I remember correctly, back in 1977. And what they did, and this is kind of fun, is that they made these, the Worldwide Mint is actually the people that made these. It seems like they made these for each one of the bottling factories in the entire Coca-Cola industry. And I think that's really cool. So there are dozens of different types of these. This is actually in KID as WWM-72. That is Worldwide Mint 72. And this bar is kind of fascinating. This is, I believe, we can zoom in here just a little bit. And this is the Mobile, Alabama bar. So you can see all the different information about that. You've got the Coke symbol down here below, but also a really beautiful vintage Coke bottle and all of this really nice acanthus scroll work. I think they really did these bars very well. I think they knew that these were going to become highly collectible, and each one of them is just slightly different from the rest of them. So this has got to be a fun series to collect. You guys who are serious collectors out there of art bars, let me know if you've got any of these pieces. And I promised that I would keep on going and talking about why I liked each of these pieces, why I picked them up. This one is really cool. It is pristine, right? This piece is absolutely flawless. It's got beautiful reflective semi-proof like fields. You can see them there. It's just in fantastic condition. But these are also edge marked. I'm not sure that you'll be able to see the edge marking very well. You've got a serial number there, but then on the other side, you've got the purity. I've probably got it upside down, did I? You've got the purity and some additional information about this that just makes it kind of interesting. You don't see that kind of detail on the edge marking very often on a bar like these. What it comes down to is that it actually says the purity on the bar. It's edge marked 001018, and I believe these have a mintage of about 5,000. So this isn't a super, super low mintage, but it's not bad. But it is in beautiful, pristine condition. That's a really neat one. I mentioned art bars specifically. There are a lot of my fellow YouTubers who are huge into art bars, and I think that that's a really fun thing. It's such a wide open field. And I've said on multiple occasions that when I was coming up, I always kind of discounted art bars. I never really thought they were that interesting. They seemed a little bit cringy. Maybe there was something, really weird and of the moment that these bars represented back in the 1970s. And I was after, the really cool stuff that was coming out when I was buying. So this was kind of the older generation stuff. And I kind of pushed them aside and didn't give them much thought. But I have kind of calculated how I feel about silver art bars. And I think that now I am looking for these pieces because they do represent kind of a frozen moment in time. That's a very cool thing. A 1977 bar is a pretty old bar. I would call the golden age of art bars probably 1972 to maybe 1975. This may be just a little bit outside of that, but we'll see an example here in just a second of something that has really changed my mind. And something that has come out recently that I still think is very cool. If you like the exploration of silver art bars, and again, this is a fascinating subset of our hobby, check out Silverstruck. He is one of my favorite YouTubers. He has really, really deep stacks of fascinating bullion, but he touches on silver art bars also. And then Coin Sense and Nonsense has been knocking it out of the park with his collection of silver art bars. I'll put a link to both of them down below. There are many other YouTubers who I watch who do silver art bars too. I've mentioned several of them in the past. But in this video, check out Silverstruck, check out Coin Sense and Nonsense. These are two people who really understand this market and have some fascinating examples. Moving right along. This is a bar from Hamilton Mint. Hamilton Mint, one of the most prolific makers of silver art bars. Silver art bars, just really briefly, about 1971, 72, somewhere in there, we started realizing that people were missing the silver coinage that used to circulate, and they were looking for other alternatives. And one of the things that came along was these 1 ounce, 1 troy ounce, 3/9 fine silver bars that have kind of pretty interesting designs on them. They changed the designs constantly. They became very collectible. This is a great example. Hamilton Mint, 1974 Father's Day bar under the old oak tree. Isn't that pretty? With a really interesting back, and you can see the date on it, 1974, first annual Father's Day. Hamilton Mint, one of the most prolific makers of art bars in Kidd, and I've mentioned Kidd before. It's kind of the spiral-bound manual of art bars in the same way that the Red Book is kind of the spiral-bound coin book. Very, very similar in a lot of ways. There are 27 pages of Kidd in the smaller spiral bound dedicated to Hamilton Mint. That's how many different issues they put out. But they did a really nice job. They are very collectible. This is Kidd Ham 10. That's Hamilton Mint 10, which probably means this is the 10th bar they ever did. I'll see if I can slow it down just a little bit. We'll take a nice close-up view of this one so you can see just how detailed it is. Do you see how it's proof-like in the fields, but kind of matte finish in the bar itself? It's really just a very pretty bar, a very well done bar, and I really do like that crosshatch kind of pattern on the back. I think it really makes it stands out. This one is edge marked also, I believe. There we go. With the number on this piece, and if I was just looking at that correctly, that is 9298. Again, not every single art bar is going to have a serial number on it. Generally speaking, you try to get the lowest serial number you can. This bar is such a pristine example. Looks like it's never been touched. That's why I picked this one up, and it's a very cool bar. I promised that we would talk about something that was a little bit more recent, and I did a video not that long ago where I talked about the joys and potential pitfalls of what I called novelty bullion. I'll put a link to that video down below also. And it seems to be kind of a new phenomenon that people who are entering the market now are becoming obsessed with the most current silver bullion product that's on the market. And it seems like a lot of different mints are putting out interesting silver bullion, trying to capture the imagination of newer stackers. And I come from a kind of an old school perspective where things that have age to them, things that have a history to them, are much more interesting to me than something that is of the moment, that is right now. However, I'm starting to come around a little bit, right? I'm an old guy, but I'm starting to kind of appreciate the fact that there are some very interesting things that are hitting the market now that maybe have some potential. And honestly, potential is nice, but if it's something that excites you, something that you really want to get because you think it's cool, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just I don't want to see people go too deep into things that are kind of a fad, because there will always be a new fad coming along. And I hate to see you getting stuck with that without a chair when the music stops playing. But I'm talking about all that in a long-winded way. What is it? It's a Besker bar. Come on, you guys already knew that, right? This is really kind of fun. This is not typically up my Strasse, as the Germans might say, but in fact, that's one of the things that I talked about in that video about novelty bullion. But the fact of the matter is that this is cool because it's got so much cross-collector appeal. These were from The Mandalorian originally. This is a TV show based on the Star Wars universe, no pun intended. And this was kind of the metal that was used as a currency, as a means of exchange, but it was also used as a form of very fancy metal that was able to make interesting armor, if I remember my lore correctly. But these come from, and this is not unusual, they come from Niue. I talked about them before. They were a small Pacific island nation that doesn't even have its own mint and certainly doesn't circulate these, even though this has the Niue shield on it, right? The state design on it. They are minted by a mint, I believe, in Australia for this country, who gets a little bit of revenue from doing that. But the cool thing is that this is monetized. You see, it actually says $2 right there. It's a strange looking coin. Is it really a coin if they don't circulate them, if they don't have their own mint? The fact of the matter is that this piece is part of Lucasfilm lore, right? This is actually part of the Star Wars universe, and to see it reflected in a piece of bullion is just kind of cool. Now, the 2021, I believe, is the first year of issue on these, and there is some collector value to these. These have taken off quite a bit. I understand the 10-ounce bars also have some value. Niue has released multiple versions of these. They've come out for several years. if I remember correctly. So if this wasn't the first year of issue, I probably wouldn't have gotten it. Now, this one has seen a little bit of handling. I would call this AU58 if I had to. It's not usually something that I would buy because it misses that enhancement a little bit. I got it at a great price. I didn't pay a premium for it. It's an interesting piece that is a connection to Star Wars, and I am of the age where the original 3 Star Wars movies were a very important part of our youth. So to have something that has a connection to that, that is an official Lucasfilm item, that is a monetized piece of silver bullion, it's kind of neat. I think it's kind of fun. So you younger guys who are out there collecting these pieces that appeal to you because of their relevance to you as a younger collector, run with that. Have fun with that. Don't go too deep into it, especially if you're paying a high premium. But if you can pick up something that you feel is interesting, that keeps your excitement, that keeps you wanting to stack, nothing wrong with that. Now I kind of encourage it. I guess you can teach an old dog new tricks. What do we think about that? Is this something that you have? Is this something that you're interested in? The next bar is been kind of a long struggle. I am hesitant to call it a white whale because I don't really feel it's that thing, but it's been one of those things that's been sitting there without its box being checked for a very long time, and I am thrilled that I finally get to check this box off the list. I'm talking about the Silver Mint, and this silver bar is part of a series about famous American, Native American, Indian, Indigenous chiefs, this one Osceola, of the Seminole tribe. So this is Silver Mint Kid 1975 TSM 41. This is from a series of 12 that they made of this. One of the things that I don't like about this, even though this is a pretty cool piece, is that it's only 20 grams. So this is not a full troy ounce. A full troy ounce, just over 31 grams. So it's pretty close. Call it 2/3 of a troy ounce, something like that. They also made 2 different versions of that. There is a collector's version and there's a limited edition version. They are virtually identical. I'm not exactly sure what separates the 2 of them, but what makes this piece interesting? Besides the fact that it is a pretty neat looking bar, right? You can see that this is in pristine condition with really nice semi-proof like fields against a matte finish kind of foreground there, is that I bought this set way back, and I'm looking at the date now. I think it was 2017 or 2018, so it's been a good 6-7 years, something like that. I was at a local coin shop, and somebody had just come in and sold the 12-piece set of these famous American Indigenous chiefs. And somebody right before me had walked out with the Osceola. So this was no longer a full set. It was an 11-piece set, and that grinds your gears, right? The fact that somebody would have taken one of these and that my dealer would have sold one of them to a customer. I went ahead and bought the rest of the pieces because I thought they were really cool, and I've been holding on to them for a long time. I actually ordered a replacement off of eBay. It was sent to me, even though the person had shown the front and the back. They sent me the limited edition piece instead of the collector's piece. I think I've got that right. Yeah, because this is the collector set. You see that down below, rather than the limited edition piece. These have skyrocketed in price. Even though they are not a full troy ounce, they seem to sell in that $45 to $50 range per piece right now. And I just happened to come across this one that I bought right after I bought the full set. They sent me the wrong one. I had to send it back to them. And it's been bothering me ever since. Every once in a while, I actually have an eBay alert every time Osceola silver comes up. And I get all sorts of collector spoons and plates and things like that. And it's never the right one, or it comes up with the limited edition one instead of the collector's one. And then a couple of weeks ago, probably about a month and a half ago, I got an opportunity to buy this piece, and it scratched all of those itches. It crossed off all of those T's. It checked all of those boxes. It was the correct version of it. Once again, it was the collector's version of it. It wasn't the limited edition. It's an absolutely beautiful, pristine condition. I'd seen several of them that had hairlines all over them. So I was finally able to buy my Osceola. You can call it the white whale if you really want to. And it goes along with the entire set. You can see I've got the entire set here, except for this one here. So we'll be putting that into the final set, and we'll come up with the total 12-piece set. I'll show images of this later on my channel if anybody is interested. because I think it is kind of a cool set. It's a very interesting form of art. I wouldn't say it's kind of classic. It's almost kind of mid-century. Again, this is 1970s, 1975. So it's really kind of an interesting throwback. We're talking about bars that are about 50 years old now. Now, the original set came in a clamshell style case with red velvet, and unfortunately, this was not what was sold to my dealer. Am I eventually going to try to find an empty clamshell case? I don't know. I kind of feel like I've accomplished what I'd always wanted to accomplish to finally complete this set. And there's a reason you guys have never seen this before. I don't think I've ever shown it on my channel. It's because it was an incomplete set. But now it finally is a complete set, and I'm really, really happy about that. I know it's a silly thing, but I know you feel the same way about stuff. Once in a while, something just sticks in your craw, and it bothers you and bugs you, and this has bothered and bugged me for about 7 years now, so it's nice to be able to finally cross this one off the list. The last category we're going to talk about, since we talked about all three different styles of silver bars, right? We talked about those pieces that are industrial refining bars. We talked about the investment and banking bars. And now we've talked about some of the art bars. And I would consider this to be an art bar. Like I said, it's in kid, even though it's only a 20-ounce bar. It still is part of that series, right? Coins. I am a coin collector. I've been a coin collector my entire life. Was really a coin collector from the time that I was a little kid, and I still see myself as a coin collector probably before I see myself as a bullion stacker. So I can't let a quarter go without buying some interesting pieces. You're looking at this great big piece, and I know a lot of you already know what this is, and a lot of people probably rolling their eyes at this, but I did mention that I would talk about sleepers. And I do feel that this is a sleeper. This is not completely out of alignment with what I've been talking about recently, because I did also put out a video about the idea of a 5-ounce silver bar. Is it going to eclipse the 10-ounce silver bar? As silver prices have gone up so much, the 10-ounce silver bar is out of reach of a lot of people. It's not surprising with prices at $40, $45 an ounce right now as I'm filming. That puts each one of these at the $450, $500 plus range. That's a lot of money. So maybe a 5-ounce idea is not a bad idea. And I mentioned one of the things that I felt was a sleeper in that video, which is the America the Beautiful 5-ounce silver quarters. As weird as that face value seems, these pieces are beautiful. They are backed by the United States Mint. They have pretty low mintages. They stopped making them several years ago now, and they've been a sleeper because they never really seem to fit into anybody's collection, but I do think that they have potential. But before the 5-ounce The America Beautiful coins, there was this really strange issue. What is this? This is a 1973 Panama 20 Balboas. This is KM number 31, if you're a big fan of the Krauss-Mischler numbers. Issued from 1972 to 1976. This is a strange, strange coin. And anybody who's been around coin shops for years like I have, you are familiar with these. You've seen them before. Maybe you even have a few of these. I've never owned one before until just recently, and I bought it kind of chasing this idea of the early part of bullion. What represented consumer bullion back in the day besides silver art bars? I think this is one of them. It's a strange issue from what I call the dawn of consumer bullion. After 90% and 40% was removed from our coinage, people still wanted to buy silver. So this is one of the things that came up. 61 millimeters. It was, at the time, the largest legal tender coin. So 61 millimeters versus 38 millimeters for United States silver dollar. You can see just how big this thing is. It is 92.5% silver. It's sterling silver. And as if you have been somebody who's been in coin shops and bullion places for a long time, you know that for a long, long time, dealers didn't want to deal in sterling. They still don't want to when it comes to things like sterling silver flatware. It's problematic. But I'm thinking specifically about pieces like the Mexican onza. It was a stepping stone to get us where we needed to be in terms of bullion. You remember that 90% was the standard that we were used to when it came to coinage. Mexico wanted to up the game along with a few other organizations. So they went from 90% to 92.5%. It seemed to make sense at the time, right? This was an opportunity to have even more purity than we had been used to. And I think a lot of people felt that that would become the new standard. It's even more pure than our circulating silver coins, so why wouldn't you want it? The problem is that people kind of rejected it and it was a stepping stone on the way to 3/9 or even 4/9 fine silver bullion coins. So it's always held kind of a strange location, and I'm very pleased to say that the onzas, the Mexicans onzas, the original 1949 piece, but also the 1978, 79, and 1980 pieces seem to have gotten a lot more appreciation over the last few years. I've done videos about them. I've showed off my pieces. I think those onzas are really cool. You're looking at a picture of one of them now. This is very similar in a lot of ways. So this piece from Panama from 1972 to 1976, issued as both a proof and a matte finish. The proof looks like a standard proof with reflective and very mirror-like fields. You can see that this is a matte finish. The matte finish pieces typically, across all series, not always, but often the matte finish pieces have a lower mintage than the proof pieces. So if you're after something like that, always double check and look in the Red Book or look at an online source and see what the lowest mintage style is. It is probably going to be beneficial to pick up the lowest mintage. That's one of the ways that you can enhance your stack. Get a piece that has a lower mintage. Often it doesn't cost any more, but that way you're going after something that has a little bit more intrinsic scarcity. I think that's an important tip. So 129.59 grams of sterling silver equals 3.8539 troy ounces of silver. It's a weird one, right? Why such a weird weight? Why such a weird purity? Do you know? Go ahead and shout it at the screen right now. Let everybody in the family, in the house, know that you're yelling at a computer screen. But tell me why you think this strange purity, and I'll give you my idea of why I think, not necessarily a strange purity, but a strange weight. 129.59 grams equals 2,000 grains. The grain is a unit of measurement that is much more precise, but also incredibly small. We, in the modern silver bullion field, we look at grams, but we also kind of focus on troy ounces now, right? Even fractions of a troy ounce, half a troy ounce, a quarter of a troy ounce, a tenth of a troy ounce. But again, at the dawn of the consumer bullion fad, I think a lot of designers, a lot of refiners were looking at something that was maybe the best of all worlds, and they went with the measurement of grains. I mentioned those onzas. The original onzas actually have the weight in grains on them also. We don't talk about grains very much at all anymore. You would be hard-pressed to find a modern bullion piece that's been made in the last several decades even that indicates its weight in grains. So why did we do that? It's a much more precise measurement, but there was one organization that was kind of leading the way in producing silver bullion that looked very much like art bars in the same period of time as the art bar, except they were usually weighed in grains. If it sounds familiar, I'm talking about the Franklin Mint. And that's what's really kind of interesting about this. Franklin Mint, located in Pennsylvania, actually struck these 20 Balboas for Panama. Is that a strange thing? Franklin Mint made lots of different art bars, lots of different things that we would kind of consider to be art bar adjacent. They put out lots of holiday bars, and they were often 1,000 grains, 2,000 grains, 5,000 grains, 10,000 grain bars, often in sterling silver. But again, you can't blame them for doing this. This was a logical thing for them to have done when you see it from the perspective of the early dawn of consumer bullion. They thought they were making something even better than 90%. But again, it kind of turned out that nobody really cared much for sterling silver. So these things, even though they were made in pretty significant numbers, were melted in mass, right? You can't find anybody who truly collects these 20 Balboas. They are such a strange, big, huge, heavy, unusual, and not especially attractive coin. But they are monetized. They are from the dawn of our consumer bullion. They do have kind of an interesting history to them. They were made by a private American mint. All this kind of stuff is really interesting. And incidentally, you can see, I'll show it to you right down here. You've got the purity, lay 925, and then this little corn stalk kind of device. Do you see that on the end? If you've got any other bullion, especially vintage bullion that has that, that is the hallmark for the Franklin Mint. So now you know that those early pieces made by a private mint for a country all the way towards the equator, were a stepping stone to the modern bullion pieces you have now. If it's a long-winded thing to say, I've been looking at these pieces for quite a while. I've had a chance to buy one of these, and I had an option to buy several different pieces that were proofs, several pieces that were this kind of a dusky matte finish. And I finally picked one of these that has maybe a little bit higher mintage than some of them, but even that high mintage is not that high. I think the highest mintage of these was probably around 100,000 pieces. That's a pretty small mintage for a modern coin. Some of them have mintages all the way down to like 2,500. So if you're interested in pursuing these really strange, great big, odd sterling silver pieces that are part of our heritage when it comes to bullion, because these weren't meant to be spent, right? Even though they were monetized, nobody was going to spend this huge honking coin. This was truly a silver bullion vehicle, and I think it's kind of a fascinating, charming in certain ways, a stepping stone to where we are now. So yeah, I picked up a 20 Balboas. What are you going to do? Definitely look into the online sources to find out the lowest mintage of those pieces. There are some examples available on eBay right now. Look at those matte proof, or not proof, the matte finish pieces, the uncirculated ones. I think that there is some potential. I think that these are a sleeper, at least a little bit. And that moves us to the final two pieces that I picked up. If you've seen them before, you've seen my channel before, you know that I'm a huge fan of these. These are Spanish colonial 8 reales. Why do I like them? Why do you not like them? I mean, how could you not like them? These are always exciting to find. One of my local dealers had both of these. They sold them to me very inexpensively. I paid about 1.5 times melt for them. That's cheap, right? I bought these very inexpensive. You can't turn down something like that when you see it like that. We'll talk about both of them really briefly. We'll talk about this one first. This is a 1797. We got a 1797 and a 1798. Isn't that fun? We seem to have a theme of things that are related to each other. I think it's kind of fun. What are these marks all over the coin? These are chop marks. I've talked about chop marks before. These Spanish colonial pieces were made in New Spain, and this piece I think we can see right here with the OM mark. It was made in Mexico City. That's the Mexico City Mint. But they were made and exported almost immediately to Asia, to China in particular, where the Chinese merchants and bankers would punch these with a steel punch and a hammer to test the authenticity and the silver content of them. There were counterfeits at the time that had a thin layer of silver, and it's thought that by punching these deep into the coin, you could check to see if the coin was made out of copper nickel or copper or silver plated, whatever it was, versus these high purity, nice, big, solid silver coins. So these chop marks, when I was coming up, were kind of discounted. Everybody thought of them as a damaged coin, but I think that opinion has definitely shifted. I always thought they were kind of neat. But they tell the story of these pieces as they went from Mexico City all the way to the ports across the Pacific Ocean in Asia and further and beyond. They tell a really neat story, and I think that's kind of fun. The assayer on this coin, and you may have seen it when we're looking at it, is this FM right here, right? This is the mint master, the assayer, his initials on every single coin made during his tenure at the Mexico City Mint. This is a guy named Antonio Forcada La Plaza. And it's kind of neat to be able to trace this back to an individual. We know that he was an assayer based in Mexico City who worked for the Mexico City Mint, but he also surveyed and assayed pieces made by other local craftsmen. And you can, in fact, find pieces that were made in Mexico City at this time that bear his hallmark. And I think that's really kind of a neat thing. Interesting chops all along it. There is a counter mark, at least I think there is. I'll have to do a little bit more research on it. We know that I am all about the counter marks right now because of the 1811 Trinidad bit. But you see that mark there? That looks suspiciously like a counter mark, that is somebody kind of reevaluating the piece. It's not so much a mark to check the purity, the density of the silver. That looks like it's an identifier, and I'm going to have to do some research on it to see if it is what I think it might be. It's not going to add a bunch to the value of the coin, but it certainly tells more of the coin's story. And then we have the 1798, and I think it's really interesting that both of these, 1797, 1798, struck at the Mexico City Mint. There's that mint mark there, right? With the same coiner, the same mint master, FM. This piece did not seem to circulate in Asia. It is completely devoid of any chop marks, so they are made literally months apart from each other. hundreds of years ago. One of them tells the story of having traveled tens of thousands of miles across the ocean. The other one may have stayed put in Mexico City and never moved an inch. And I think that's a really fascinating story to tell. So when you can pick something like these up, I love the history behind these. I love the way that they make me feel excited to be a stacker and a coin collector, bridging that gap between coin collecting and precious metal stacking. The fact that they were inexpensive, 1.5 times melt, how could you not pick that up? And again, thank you to my dealer for selling to those to me cheap. They make it really neat. And I think with these two pieces, I have a roll of Spanish colonial 8 reales, a 20-piece roll. I think that's really fun. I probably won't keep them in a roll just because it would be a little bit too crude. But I do have at least 20 full examples of the Spanish colonial 8 reales now because of these, and it's not going to stop there. I'm obsessed with these pieces wherever I can find them, especially if I can find them inexpensively. You know I'm going to pick them up. I think that finishes us off, right? It was an interesting group of pieces to buy. I'm always after the pieces that add interest to my stack. I'm always after that enhancement. I'm looking for the pieces that are going to make the stack better and not just bigger. Do you have a favorite? Whether it's the industrial, the refining bars, the banking bars, the art bars, the 10-ounce bar, the really strange 20 Balboa. I know a lot of you guys have those. You're going to have to let me know in the comments that you've got them. Is it the 8 reales? Do you like the history behind them? Does it feel like a pirate or a swashbuckler? Is the fact that I can go from 1797 to 2021 in the same breath, and they are both silver bullion pieces in a lot of ways? I think it's fascinating. It is a fantastic hobby to be a part of. And yes, I think it is a very enriching and rewarding hobby in more ways than once. But let me know what your favorite piece from this group is. I would love to know what it is. I've got a few favorites that I've picked out, but really I think everything in here is pretty cool, and I'm happy to have been able to acquire all of these pieces. If you have questions about anything that we talked about here, by all means, leave a question down below. You guys know that I like to say if you've got a question, there's a really good possibility that somebody else has that question. Maybe they're just afraid to ask it. Ask that question. I love questions, and hopefully I can answer it for you and everybody who shares that question. If you have not yet subscribed to the channel, once again, please go ahead and click on that subscription button and hit the notification button also, because I premiere videos pretty much every Friday. Hopefully you're watching this video with me on a Friday evening and you can correspond with me. I'm right there in the chat talking with you as these videos play for the first time. But we also go live immediately after these videos, and that's a much more faster paced and spirited chat where we talk about all things precious metals and coin related. Generally speaking, we kind of take a deeper dive into the pieces that we just talked about in the premiere video, but the floor is wide open for anything as long as it's vaguely related to coins and precious metals. It's a fun way to start the weekend. They're fast-paced, and you can say hi to other people in the community. It's just a great thing. Definitely stick around for one of those live streams if you've never been to one before. Always be learning, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey as we go deeper into the world of coins and physical precious metals.